A young NASCAR driver just called out the people running his sport directly on camera in victory lane and then caught himself mid-sentence and said something that made the whole garage go quiet. Jesse Love came to Charlotte this weekend to win a race dedicated to the memory of Kyle Busch. Instead, he finished second. And what he said afterward may be the most honest thing a driver has put on record all season. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race at Charlotte Motor Speedway Saturday night was a 6-hour ordeal from start to finish. Rain delayed the event for more than 4 hours before it even began. Once it resumed, a car shed oil across the racing surface late in Stage 2, sending multiple cars, including the leader, into the wall. NASCAR cleaned up the mess under caution while fog thickened over the speedway. Rather than red flag in the race and waiting out the weather, Race Control kept the field circulating under yellow until Stage 2 ticked to its end, then immediately waved everyone to pit road and called the race complete. Chastain was declared the winner. Jesse Love crossed the start-finish line just ahead of him at the end of that final stage, a move that appeared deliberate, and finished second. Austin Hill took third, also for Childress Racing. Love did not hide how he felt about any of it. This was not an ordinary race weekend to begin with. Kyle Busch, one of the defining drivers of his generation, a two-time Cup champion, and a driver with a direct connection to Childress Racing, died just days earlier at 41 years old from complications following severe pneumonia. The entire Charlotte weekend was already carrying grief before a single lap was run. Jesse Love is a young RCR driver. He's racing for the team that Busch was part of. The motivation to win this race on this weekend for those people was not abstract. It was specific and personal. You can hear that in how he talked about it, mentioning Busch's children and wife by name, mentioning the pain inside the RCR organization. For Love finishing second in a race that ended the way this one did, under caution and fog, with half the laps never run, had to feel like being robbed of something that carried much more meaning than the usual trophy. That's why the anger came out immediately. And that's what makes what happened next so striking. The Truck Series race, meanwhile, had been postponed 3 separate times due to weather and had not yet run by the time the O'Reilly race concluded. The entire NASCAR weekend at Charlotte was unraveling in real time, and Race Control's decisions were becoming a focal point of frustration across the garage. Let's talk about what NASCAR Race Control actually did and whether Love's criticism holds up. The sequence of events matters here. A car dumps oil, caution comes out, the track gets cleaned. Rain begins moving in with fog already present. At that point, NASCAR faces a fork. Red flag the race, hold everyone in the pits, and wait to see if conditions improve or keep running under caution to the end of Stage 2 and call it there. They chose the second option. And Love's accusation is essentially that Race Control was running out the clock, using caution laps as a way to reach a stage boundary so they could end the race at a statistically legitimate stopping point without ever admitting that's what they were doing. That accusation is not paranoid. NASCAR has a long history of controversy around exactly this kind of decision-making, where the procedural outcome and the competitive outcome diverge, and drivers are left holding a result that doesn't reflect what happened on the track. When the field is circulating under yellow, the racing is over. Calling it a race at that point is a technicality, not a result. For Love specifically, the stakes were amplified because he appeared to nose ahead of Chastain crossing the stage line, a small act of defiance that suggested he understood what was happening and was making a statement on the track in the only way still available to him. But here's where the story gets more complicated and more interesting. Love didn't stop at the criticism. He caught himself. In real time, on camera, he processed the week and arrived somewhere different. He said explicitly that the anger and confusion were really about wanting to win for the people at RCR who are grieving, for Busch's family, for the team. And then he asked himself whether any of it mattered as much as he thought it did. That is a level of self-awareness you rarely see from a young driver in a frustrating post-race moment. Most drivers in that situation dig in. Love redirected. That pivot did not erase the legitimate criticism of Race Control. It actually made it more credible because it came from someone who was clearly thinking clearly about what mattered and what didn't. NASCAR will need to address how Saturday night was managed. Whether they do so publicly or internally is a different question, but the criticism is out there, it's specific, and it's coming from inside the sport. The clip with Love's comments has been circulating fast, and it's generating 2 distinct reactions depending on which part of it people are responding to. The first half of what he said, the direct shot at Race Control, is fuel for fans who have long believed NASCAR manages races for optics rather than competition. That crowd latched on immediately. The complete joke line is already being pulled out of context by people who didn't hear what came after it. The second half is what's generating the more meaningful response. Love's pivot from fury to perspective, from a trophy to Busch's children, landed differently. It reminded people that the drivers are human beings processing a real loss while also trying to compete at the highest level of their profession. That tension doesn't resolve neatly, and Love didn't try to make it neat. He just said it. Inside the RCR garage, the emotional weight of that statement likely registered hard. He was talking about people they all know personally. That's not a media moment. That's a teammate telling the truth. NASCAR acknowledges the legitimate concerns about Saturday night's race management. Maybe not publicly, but through clearer protocols around weather and caution lap finishes going forward. Love's comments become a productive moment of accountability rather than just controversy. His growth in the way he handled the post-race media, going from anger to perspective in about 60 seconds, gets recognized as a sign of real maturity. And it becomes part of how the NASCAR community remembers this difficult Charlotte weekend with some measure of dignity intact. The complete joke soundbite gets weaponized without the context of what Love said next. NASCAR circles the wagons, dismisses the criticism, and the race management controversy festers going into the Coca-Cola 600. Love takes heat for being difficult in a grief weekend. The nuance of his actual statement gets lost. In a genuinely honest moment from a young driver becomes ammunition in a tired argument about NASCAR's credibility instead of a conversation worth having. Jesse Love came to Charlotte wanting to win a race for Kyle Busch's family. He finished second in a race that ended under caution in the fog, with half the laps left unrun on a night that already had too much weight on it. He had every right to be furious. He was furious. And then he decided out loud that some things are bigger than a trophy. That doesn't make NASCAR Race Control right. It makes Love something rarer in this sport, a competitor who can hold both things at once. Here's the question I'll leave you with. Was NASCAR's decision to run out stage 2 under caution and call the race a legitimate call under difficult conditions, or was it exactly what Love said it was? You've seen the facts. Drop your verdict in the comments. And if you want the full Coca-Cola 600 breakdown tomorrow, make sure you're subscribed. This weekend isn't over yet.